What's up, guys? My name is Zach, and today I am driving a 1986 Oldsmobile Cutlass Cruiser. Up front is a 2.5-liter inline-4, and down below is a 3-speed automatic transmission. Now, I am super excited to be driving this Cutlass Cruiser for two reasons. First of all, last year I reviewed a 1981 Cutlass Cruiser, and that was a completely different car. It was rear-wheel drive. It was based off the G-body platform. It could have been optioned with a V8, although the one I specifically drove had a V6. This no longer has a V8 option. This is no longer rear-wheel drive. This is no longer on the G-body platform. So we have a lot of differences to talk about, but the second reason has to do with that engine. It is not a V6 either. This is the Iron Duke, and so we'll be digging into that a little bit later on. But if you would like to submit your own vehicle and have it reviewed here on the channel, you can head on over to my website, zackpradel.com/submit. It's a quick and easy submission form. It takes under a minute to fill out, and I come out to you. And if you would like to see all my videos weeks or sometimes months in advance, you can head on over to my Patreon for only $5 a month, as well as there's exclusive audio content. But let's get back to that 2.5-liter, better known as the Iron Duke. First of all, I have been quoted many a time saying that Iron Duke might be one of the best named engines in the history of the automobile. Pairing that with a Triumph Spitfire, I think would be an ungodly combo. The Iron Duke wasn't great. It's not really a great engine. They weren't super reliable. It was a little four-cylinder when American companies were scrambling to develop four-cylinders. They didn't really have four-cylinder engines before the 1980s. The oil crisis forced them to develop them. So a lot of the early four-cylinders just aren't good unless they got help from the Japanese. What I should say is that four-cylinders weren't very common. We had four-cylinders. Obviously, my Ford Model A is a four-cylinder, but it wasn't really the go-to. We had a lot of V6s and a lot of V8s floating around in the 70s. So this broke the chain, and finding an Iron Duke in a wagon is actually really, really rare, because if you splurged and got the wagon, which was a little bit more money, you would also get the V6. I mean, it was just a no-brainer, but whoever optioned this car either really loved the Iron Duke or really took a hard fall as a kid. Like I said, paired to it is an automatic transmission. It's fine. It's not doing me any favors here today, but I don't need it to. And last but not least, as I mentioned, it is now front-wheel drive where it started the decade rear-wheel drive. How does it feel to drive the Cutlass Cruiser? It's actually really nice. First of all, I really like the visibility. The visibility is wonderful. The steering wheel is light and very thin. And the suspension, albeit somewhat blown, is incredibly cushy and bouncy and just floaty. It feels like an old car. I'm just kind of bouncing down the street, you know, going at my own pace, and I like that. I like when cars felt like that, and this certainly does. With that stuff out of the way, let's talk about the interior. Well, in front of me, I have a very horizontal speedometer accompanied by a fuel gauge. That's it. That's all I get in terms of gauges. Down below that, we do have the interior lights and headlight switch, but on the steering wheel, we don't have anything. Really, really low slung grips. I personally like that. It really reinforces a cruiser feel, and this is the Cutlass Cruiser. And off to the left, we have a climate control vent, and on the door, we have manual mirrors, power locks, and manual windows. So power locks, but no power windows, although this does have a power antenna. So no power windows, but power antenna. Again, a very odd spec for this vehicle. Moving into the center, we do have our radio. This is an aftermarket radio. This is not the original radio. However, this is the original radio, but it doesn't work anymore, so you gotta take care of business. Down below that, we have our rear defrost as well as our climate controls. This was an air-conditioned vehicle, so we have air conditioning options, fan speed off to the right, pretty standard issue stuff there. And off to the far right, we have our Oldsmobile badge surrounded by 4 climate vents. Heaven forbid you get a slight chill or a bead of sweat over on the other side of the vehicle. Then we do have a pop-out ashtray and cigarette lighter, and we don't get any cup holders, so naturally, the Cutlass Cruiser fails the big friggin' bottle test. The seats, however, are very, very comfortable. They are this red velour, plushy goodness that I just can't get enough of. It is wonderful. They are sensational. And I think they really help out with that ride quality. Again, it does kind of float and bounce, but the seats naturally reinforce that. However, speaking of seats, we technically have 2 more rows of seating. So let's go do some backseat reviews. All right, so we're in the back of the 1986 Oldsmobile Cutlass Cruiser, and a couple of things to note. First of all, this is where you are going to notice that this platform against the outgoing platform is smaller. This is smaller than a G-body, and you kind of feel it in here. I feel a little bit scrunched up. Now, the headliner isn't doing me any favors. As you can see, it has used every single thumbtack that Office Depot will sell someone, but just the space back here just isn't as vast as it was in the previous era. It starts to become noticeable. Now, we only have lap belts back here. A funny late 80s thing is that they were only lap belts, but still have ashtrays in the front seats, so God bless that, I guess. But crank windows, of course, no center console. But I love that the burgundy carries on. This is just such a family hauler, and I love that through and through. Let's hop into the very back because we do have some more seating back there, as well as some trunk and cargo space. All right, so we're on the back of the Oldsmobile Cutlass Cruiser, and you'll see here that it says glass or gate. So round key, of course. We can move it over here, and the glass does open. Absolutely love that. The struts were recently, strut, singular, was recently replaced, and so you could open up the rear window, access what you needed to without your stuff flying out. Love to see that. But then you could go this way and it would open up the gate. So open it up like that. Obviously, we do have a bigger tailgate. That one actually does get 2 struts. There we go. And you can pull up these 2. You have to push this down, and then that comes up. So I know that this angle of the dangle is gonna be bad, but I'm in it. There we go. Although, be careful not to close it, because I've learned my lesson. And in these older station wagons, they usually don't have a release from the inside. Kind of a safety overlook. But I'm in the 3rd row. Honestly, it's not as terrible as you would think. It's not bad. I'm 5'11", not a small guy, and I fit back here, which is a miracle on its own. So, oh, I can stop holding it there. Okay, cool. So we are in the 3rd row of the Cutlass Cruiser. Very, very neat. I do get my own light up here, which is on because the tailgate's open, which makes sense, but here we are. Very cool. All right, fly away, and let's talk about the exterior. Now we gotta talk about the looks, and I like the look of the Cutlass Cruiser. If you've seen my Buick Century Wagon video, you're gonna say, hey, that looks the exact same, and you'd be spot on because they shared pretty much everything with each other. It was another one of these rebadged GM wagons that I've gone over throughout the years. That being said, I don't think it's hideous. I also don't think it's the prettiest. It's here, it's existing, and I'm happy about that. With all of that being said, let's get on to my final thoughts. What do I think driving the Oldsmobile Cutlass Cruiser from 1986? Well, this is really, really cool, especially after driving the 1981, because so much dramatically changed between then and now. And when I say then and now, I still mean 30 years ago, but you know what I mean. Oh my gosh, actually over 40 years ago, sheesh. The 80s were a very defining era for automobiles because it was the fallout of the 2 oil crises that we had here in the United States. The emissions knocked down and cracked down, the safety standards were raised, cafe standards came in and kicked everyone's tush. That all happened in the 70s, and the 70s is that defining era, but this is the fallout. This is what came after that era and all of these regulations finally coming into play with one another. And so the Cutlass Cruiser is a fantastic showing of that. They took away the rear-wheel drive in terms of efficiency. They took away the V8 in terms of cafe standards. They shortened it. They made it smaller so there was less mass and less weight for the car to carry around. They added big chunky bumpers front and rear. They started to make it at least a little bit more aerodynamic than the outgoing Cutlass Cruiser. All of these little changes become very, very apparent, and what you end up getting is a car that doesn't drive anything like its predecessor. Not to mention, when the 1981 version was out, there wasn't really much competition in terms of family hauler. But here in 1986, this vehicle had to fight with the Dodge Caravan. This would soon have to fight with the Ford Aerostar. Family transportation was evolving, and this is stuck in the past. And so the Cutlass Cruiser didn't last much longer after this, especially not with that Iron Duke, and especially not with that third row facing seat. So here it is, the 1986 Oldsmobile Cutlass Cruiser in all of its glory. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Huge thank you to Carl for letting me borrow his Cutlass Cruiser. I have reviewed so many vehicles from Carl. This is his latest acquisition, and I think it's one of his loveliest. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of Carl as well, and I always appreciate it. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys.